What's up, guys? Jabril here from Neo Vintage Games. I'm here with
Steve. How's everyone doing today?
And today we got a little bit product review for you guys. First one on the channel, and today we're reviewing My Arcade's Retro Champ. Now, for y'all who don't know what this is a portable NES player. Now, when they announced this, I was really excited. I've been waiting for like a good NES portable machine for a while. Hooking up my top loader and dealing with all that, it's a lot on a day-to-day basis because I'm always playing retro games. So if I could get something I could bring with me on the go to these game stores, it would be perfect. Not to mention there's the Superboy, which I've been playing a lot of, and that's all Super Nintendo games. So why there wasn't an NES version, I couldn't tell you. Now there's adapters that existed for previous ones, but then like you have the game thing, you have the adapter piece, and then the cartridge on top of it. It looks nuts, and it's wiggly as hell. So when they announced this, I was really excited. Reviews started coming out, mixed reception, but I was like, you know what, I'm gonna bite the bullet, drop the money. So for y'all who don't know, $80 a machine, you got a big boy here.
No, it's
beefy boy.
Yeah, it's hefty. It's hefty. There's a weight to it.
Plays NES and Famicom games. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna kind of split this into two segments. We're gonna have a review of the hardware itself, the tactile feel of it, and then we'll get into the emulation. So, your first thoughts. I played this for a couple hours. You played this couple 20-30 minutes right before we started filming here. What do you think?
So it feels at first durable. Like when you first handed it to me, like here, and you gave me a couple NES games, I was like, well, it feels solid. It feels like a good piece of hardware. It did seem very plain. Like it's just straight black.
Not a fan of the aesthetic.
Yeah, I'm not. It's just. There's nothing there. There's nothing. This is all empty, dead space. So why wasn't this? Why is the touchscreen? It reminds me like an old iPhone that had that black border.
The massive bezel, yeah.
For no reason, because none of this does anything. Again, I thought, well, maybe it's protecting the good, high quality stuff inside. The buttons felt okay. The D-pad, we both actually agreed, was
very mushy,
squishy. Like it doesn't feel like those precise games, which is most NES games aren't going to be that great. Besides that, there was nothing else. I mean, the start, select, reset buttons were fine. Changing the ratio was okay. And then I did play, so I played Super Mario 3, and it felt okay. It didn't feel like the most precise, but for what it would do, I'd be like, oh, this is fine. It's actually like, especially you're a big retro collector compared to me, going to a retro store to test the game out.
Which I've done already.
Yeah.
It works good in that regard.
That's a good aspect of it. Like, so this should be solid. But again, that was my first impressions. You spent a little bit more time and had a couple more negatives.
So I've pretty much seen the ins and outs of this. Mine arrived Friday. We're filming on Sunday. I've spent these last few days, like every single day, spending a significant amount of time. I probably put 5.5 hours into this point, playing it in bed, trying different things. There's a number of things that I have an issue. There's some things I like about it. So for y'all who don't know, there's a composite image on here. So the resolution is going to be on the lower side. We'll get more into that in terms of when we get into the emulation and the playability. The design of the thing itself, I don't mind the size that much. It's bigger than I think it should be necessarily. If you look here, this is where most of the chipset is. This empty space down here is pretty much used for Famicom games, putting that in. Would I have preferred a sleeker design to just take regular NES carts and not necessarily worry about the Famicom side? Me personally, I'm not a Famicom collector, so I would have preferred that, maybe a longer but like thinner design. I probably would have preferred that. D-pad's very mushy. It's fine if you're playing something like a Mario, especially if you're getting into the like a Gradius type game. Yeah. I bumped into issues when I was playing specifically two games, Ninja Gaiden and Castlevania. Specifically Castlevania when you want to use the items and you're doing a lot of directional changes. It's a little bit too mushy. I found my hand slipping a lot, so that was an issue in and of itself. 16:9 4:3. I don't know who's playing NES games. Like if you have a game like this, you're spending $80. You already have a whole bunch of physical cards, so you're already kind of dealing with a contingent of the hardcore base. Sure. No one's playing 16:9, so this long screen for no reason. High resolution when you boot it up, but the moment the game starts, it sinks it down to like 240p. I don't know. They made some interesting choices. I understand they wanted to cut costs in that regard. The cleaner, on this side, this comes out and you can store a cleaner in there. That was one of kind of like the selling points for it. It's fine. I use a 1-up card, so it's not something I necessarily will use the best. AB, completely fine. Not the best. The Switch Pro controller That's kind of like where I like playing the retro games. If I'm not using an NES controller itself or a Super Nintendo controller, I want kind of like the Switch Pro controller. I think they nailed it on that. So yeah, it's a little beefy. It doesn't bother me that much. Once you have a game in it, I'll show you guys an example of how it looks. Like, so this is actually what you're dealing with. When you're actually playing, you got this thing sticking out. The wiggling thing is not a massive issue. If you touch the game is when you bump into a little bit of flickering and compatibility issues in that regard. But once it's just sitting in there, that's not that bad. The biggest main issue I have with it is the pin connectors. Now, there's two issues I have with it. It has the death grip thing, which other people reviewing have talked about. Like, getting your games, they are not over at exaggerating. It's like impossible. You've tried it. Like, it's bad.
Yeah, so it's funny because you were like, I'm going to put this game in for you.
Yeah.
And you immediately like, when you go to pull it out, let me know.
Let me do it.
Just in case. And I was like,
it's bad.
That bad. And you told me to do it, and you feel like you're going to snap it. And it's weird in a day and age where it'd be easier to use the different pins or some easier way to pull out. I mean, this is not the first retro machine. You feel like you're gonna break it.
Yeah, if you have a rare game, I would not suggest you putting it into this, just out of fear that you're gonna damage the case in some capacity on taking it out. That's why, like, I don't have that many rare games in my collection, but there's games that I hold near and dear to my heart. So I'm not putting my Castlevania 3 into here. Not to mention that don't even work on this console, but we'll get there on the second half of the review. Now, that's my first problem with the pin connectors, is just the tightness of it and how impossible. We'll see if it loosens up over time. I'll find out, but in the 2.5, 3 days, carts in and out for hours, I haven't seen it loosen up at all. So that's an issue. The second is the sensitivity on them. Now, I'm talking about in terms of, like, you need your games like spotless for it to run. Because I had my top loader on the floor, I had this right here. I'm putting in a game, it's not reading, but it's also not on the list of incompatible games. And I've seen people, like, videos of people playing it, specifically my Mario 3. I know it reads Mario 3, but it's just blue screening. So I'm like, what is the issue? I pop it into my NES top loader, reads completely fine, no issue. Put it in here, it's not reading. Get the 1-up card, alcohol, scrubbing it, air, make sure it's as clean as possible, it reads. A day later, bumps into the thing. So it needs to be beyond spotless. It's super, super sensitive. To some people, I guess, who are archivists and keep their games wrapped up in cellophane and preserved like it's a dinosaur skeleton, I'm sure they won't bump into this issue. But for anybody who has them on shelves and have, like, reasonable dust collection, you're gonna bump into issues.
Yeah, it makes it more obvious where, like you were saying, the selling point, this fun feature of having a little dock or a little spot where you can keep your cleaning
out of necessity, pretty much.
Now it's more like, oh well, you have to have it because games are constantly not going to work. Like you said, your Mario 3, you said you've got it working.
Yeah.
That's the first game I tried to load up when I came.
Nothing.
And immediately blue screen. I was like, supposed to happen? And you were like, no. You're like, this is like the third time you told me you cleaned it.
Yeah. In
the 3 days you've had it, and it's in good condition. Like you said, your top loader reads it. So that does worry me over the aspect that, you know, some games you just can't find in great condition, but if you're telling me it runs on your top loader, you gotta constantly scrub and, you know.
Yeah, I can only imagine if you were dealing with, like, slight oxidation that you bump into, like, at, like, yard sales and stuff like that. There's not a chance in hell this reads it. Now, we can get into the second half, which is the way it runs the game, the emulation. It's not running it native in the way that you'd see, like, an analog NT running it. Those are, like, the higher end. We're going on a more simpler Retron style kind of emulation here. What do you think about how it runs the game?
So it's passable. Like, it does what it needs to do. You know, the sounds a little wonky, but most, you know, third party, you know, they're all third party hardware. Just, you know, warp the sound a little bit. Some of the games I've played a lot on the Retron. The Retron does it too sometimes. It's a little bit more noticeable here. I don't know if it's just because, you know, I was playing it on your handheld mode, so the speakers are right there and I can just hear it. The crackling is not one thing, because that's just old games in general.
Yeah.
It looked fine, it ran fine. It wasn't like a noticeable downgrade. You just feel like you're not playing the game the way it should be, and I understand, again, third-party hardware, you know, My Arcade, it's not really a company I heard too much about. And, you know,
there's a lot of clone consoles.
Yeah, a lot of clone consoles, so it looked good to get the job done, and I understand why someone who wants to test things out and they're constantly at retro stores would want that. That makes sense.
Helps me. But then I worry about the fact that how sensitive the pin connectors are. Are you honestly going to run into that many NES games at retro stores that'll even run that thing? What, am I going to clean every single game in the retro store that I want to try?
You're going to clean for them. What if it doesn't work and you're like, well, I'm not going to purchase this now because...
Yes. But it's perfectly functional. It just doesn't run.
Is it the cartridge? Yeah. Is it the, the
Retro Champ?
The Retro Champ? What is it that's causing that mistakes? Again, the colors, again, emulation is weird and hardware is different, so it does look a little bit off. Like the Marios, like certain of the colors didn't look as vibrant or as crisp as it should be. But again, you've played more games on it. What did you actually think of the way it runs?
So, kind of mixed results. Again, composite signal, that'll bother some people more than others. There's zero upscaling on this, so don't expect that at all. However, I do want to note, and some people in the reviews didn't seem to notice this as much as I did, is that when you hook it up via HDMI, and I didn't get the chance sadly to show you this, it upscaled it pretty decently for Castlevania. I'll show you after the fact. I was actually pretty impressed in that regard. They cleaned up the image a lot through HDMI. But that was specifically Castlevania and Mega Man. Those were the two that I tried. And then I tried Mario, actually, 3. I didn't get the chance to try like Ninja Gaiden and Strider, so I don't know if it looks clean there, but there is some degree of upscaling when it's translating it through a HDMI signal. It's not as good as you would get with like a high-end converter or anything like that. But and I don't know if that's necessarily something I'd like bank on as like a selling point, but it's something positive to say about it. Emulation is fine. I didn't notice any like crazy latency or anything like that. The flickering is pretty much exactly like what you would see with a normal console. So it doesn't fix that, nor would you want that necessarily to be fixed with NES titles. So that was never an issue. It was just so much like the compatibility list.
Yeah.
Now, one of the first games I ran into when I got this console was Castlevania 3. Popped it right in there. That's my favorite NES game. That's the game that I want to play the most. Doesn't work on this. I contacted customer support and they sent me a living list. And what I mean by living is that it's ever growing. They don't have a definitive thing. That's literally what they explained to me.
Okay.
Is that, and I'm like, is there anything I can do on my end to troubleshoot this? Or is it something like with the hardware? And there's like, yeah, there's nothing you can do. You could send it in to us for a refund. And that's only after they inspect it and they won't pay for shipping. I'm not trying to rag on their customer service, but I'm just saying it's not the easiest experience. So it's like almost like, I'll just keep it. It's just easier to keep it.
Yeah, at that point.
So kind of ultimate conclusion. What do you think? At the price point of $80, what do you think about this?
I guess it depends what you're looking. If you have no other way to play NES games, I just feel like if you have a collection of NES games, you already have a way to play them.
Yeah.
If you want them specifically on the go, and I guess if you have $80 to blow and you're not really worried about playing them constantly this way, like I don't see myself being able to, like if I want to sit down and play a whole game, which not a lot of safe features in a lot of these old NES games. Do I want to play it on this? Like you were telling me, the battery life's kind of wonky on it, so if I think I can beat a game in 3 hours, but in less than that, it's gonna just drop. Why not play it on a better? $80 is very steep.
Steep for this, yeah.
So, I've seen the Retron, the newest Retron, which was still believes the Retron 5, which plays
everything. Yeah.
I've seen them for like 140, 120 on sales. You can buy pre-owned ones online. That seems way more where you should be putting your money to.
For sure.
I mean, even like you were saying, you were like excited for it, but immediately you were just like, oh no.
Yeah. Because
there's so many just shortcomings of it. It does feel like a quick cash grab. They knew there's no real way to play NES games on the go compared, like the Superboy, and this is it. I don't think it's the solution. I think there's gonna probably be another company or someone gonna kind of maybe Hyperkin. Yeah. I'm surprised they haven't tapped too much into it yet. Hopefully they produce just a more substantial one. The compatibility, they should, or if there was a specific list like that you knew before you bought it.
Yeah.
Because what if you was like, these 3 NES games, those are my games. Well, you find out after you purchase it, all 3 of those games don't work. Yeah,
pretty much anything with that more advanced audio chipset is incompatible with this console. And I just feel like if you've got a living list of games that don't work on your NES clone console, that's not something that should be buried in a customer service in like email. That's something that, I'm not saying put it on the front page of your advertising, but like,
make it accessible.
When you're talking about like, hey, play that big collection of NES carts you have, you'll be able to play it on the go. That's not necessarily the reality of having this device. So that's an issue I have with it. I would say for $80, that's way overpriced for what you're getting here. I think if you're one of these people that absolutely is the portable aspect of it, that's the main selling point for you, then sure, get this. But if you have a NES collection and you just want an easier way to play it, I mean, I don't necessarily think this is an improvement over just buying a used NES that works, especially if you can find a top loader, beautiful. Yeah. But if you could just get a used NES, and then if your problem is that you have an HD TV or 4K TV and you don't have composite cables or AV switch you could put in, a cheap converter on Amazon combined with a classic NES console, still better off. Second, I would say then you get into the Retrons. And then if you really want to get into it, I mean, a RetroPie. Like, just keep it real. Like, I don't necessarily support the emulating industry, but
I wasn't gonna really mention that, but that's
still better than
an option, and it's a whole lot cheaper
for sure
than $80.
And hey, if you want to keep things all legit, emulate and get ROMs for games that you already own. That is legal.
Technically, yes, that is legal. So
and the RetroPie is legal as well. So I think there's just a million things that are just better than this. The added bonus that I don't take advantage of is the Famicom ability, much like the Superboy that also plays Super Famicom games.
But you gotta think,
I'm not a Famicom collector.
It's mainly, even though, so a Famicom game you have, most likely is gonna be in Japanese.
Yeah.
I can't read Japanese. You don't read Japanese. No. So in what, most Americans, I would assume, don't speak Japanese, can't read Japanese. So what's the really, most people I see who have Famicom collections are just to have it as a collector's item.
I just struggle to see the market for this,
Yeah, why am I going to go buy the Famicom version of Mario Brothers 3? For what reason will I buy to play that version?
Yeah.
When I won't read nothing.
And I don't want to like crap on this console or crap on my arcade, but at the end of the day, I spent my own money on this.
Sure.
So it's not like I got some PR kit. I dropped the $80. I'm not going to send this back, so I'm pretty much not stuck with this.
Yeah.
I want to be nice, but
we'll put it to use.
Yeah, this is a good way for us to be able to capture NES footage.
That's true.
Through HDMI into an Elgato. So that's like the one main thing that I'm going to be using it for. It has the kickstand. Not to mention, one thing we didn't mention is the controllers. The fact that it's only compatible with my arcade controllers.
Yeah, so the most popular, I would say, Bluetooth wireless controls are the 8-bit-toe.
Yeah. I
They do the great, I think they call them NE3 Pro ones. Yeah. They work with Switch, which Nintendo doesn't allow nothing.
Yeah, but
even that. And it works with that. The fact that they made a specific Bluetooth control and not even packing one for you.
Yeah. You need the special bundle.
When
that's
I
more
saw
money.
this and I saw the release, I thought you were gonna pop out a Switch style. Oh, here's a
Joy-Con controller.
So because you have the HDMI spot right here.
And one thing fixes this for me. One thing. If they just had a little port here where I can plug in my old NES controller, then I have no problem with
the Retron.
Yeah, just like the Retron.
The Retron on one side has the Genesis.
Look at all this wasted space in here. Just right here or right here, because it has a kickstand. You can plug it right there. If I can plug in my old controller, then all my complaints about the controller compatibility issues disappear. I have old NES controllers ready to go. If anything, if there was like a USB type situation, even that could help. I could plug in a Pro controller or something like that, but they don't really offer any of that. It has some weird pairing system in the back. It's just a lot of weird concessions they make here. Again, I would say generally speaking, unless you can find a means to get this at a way cheaper price point, under $50, then sure, but at $80, no way I can recommend this in good faith.
Yeah, I mean, again, I was excited to come see this, and when I got my hands on it, first I was like, kind of cool, and all the shortcoming came, and I was like, it's not really on my list to get. I'd rather, again, invest on maybe getting another Retron for myself, because my other one's a little beaten up, and I thought maybe this would be a nice way to do it, especially to get some stuff on the road, like you said. And I didn't see the appeal.
Yeah.
It didn't call out to be like, get this now.
Yeah, I think at some point within the near future, next couple of years, we're going to see something vastly superior to this. You're probably going to have a high-end version from Analog. Yeah. I'm sure they'll drop some kind of like handheld analog mini that will run this, but it's going to be expensive as hell. And I'm sure Hyperkin's going to jump into and they already got their Game Boy coming that plays Game Boy games natively. I'm sure they'll find a way to do a handheld NES player that will be way better than this. But again, not to crap all over my arcade, but I think this ain't it, Chief.
No,
period.
It gets the base requirements done, and it just has to. just the scales tip over. It's like
couple pros, a whole bunch of cons.
It doesn't beg to be bought. It doesn't beg to be bought.
Yep. Well, that's our review on the Retro Champ. For any of y'all who have the Retro Champ, I'd love to know what your thoughts are down below. If you guys disagree with us, if you guys agree with us, let us know. But till next time, this is Neo Vintage Gaming. Bye.